చందన హలో చందన చందన Yeah, please tell me where we stopped last class. Oh, yeah. Okay. That's second test. ఎప్పుడు 3 ఏళ్ళు డోర్ డోర్ వేసావా క్లాస్ Okay, students, I hope in the previous class we discussed about this human factor studies. Is it clear? And even we have seen data analysis. Is it clear? So today we discuss about usability engineering method. I think this also we have discussed. Seed dragon part. Yeah. So okay. So in the previous class we discussed about human factor studies and usability engineering methodology. I hope I'm audible. Anyone can reply? Okay. Srija, okay. So now we go for the next one, that is user performance studies. In the previous classes, we studied about different factor studies. Is it clear? And then usability engineering methodology. Is it clear? Where we have discussed about the model, whether it is, to be frank, we can say that whether it can be used by the user in an easy way or not. That means whatever the software or the model that we have developed, so that model whether can be used by the user in a comfortable way or not. So based on that we have seen. So even for that, one example also we took, that is sea dragon example. Clear? For the sea dragon example, so this is how it is explained: usability engineering method, where user task analysis, user guidelines based on evaluation, then formative evaluation and summative evaluation are considered, and all these results were shown in this table. Is it clear? So this particular thing was tested on grotto wall, that is projected on wall, then projected on workbench and desktop. So from all these conclusions, it is observed that performed this particular methodology was performed fastest on a desktop monitor and very much slow on workbench. Is it clear? Egocentric navigation was fastest in monoscopy, and exocentric navigation was fastest in stereoscopy. So like that, we discussed about usability engineering methodology. Now let us discuss about performance studies. So once if you develop a model in a virtual reality, is it clear? We saw that how that particular technology is used by the user, whether it is easy or difficult or like that, which method is that is whether can be seen on the monitor or can be seen on laptop or other things like that. Now this particular performance study is very important, because so we can say that this particular performance study during interactions with virtual worlds in general is a complex endeavor, because there are many factors are involved here. So what are the main factors that are considered here by the user? And user యొక్క characteristics are చాలా important. So the user performance studies in general include the particular virtual world simulated, the characteristics such as age, prior knowledge or computer knowledge, and even system characteristics. Is it clear? I once again repeat that user performance studies are very important, because the user characteristics like age, prior computer knowledge or task knowledge, or even system characteristics, clear, or even task characteristics and interaction techniques play an important role on the user performance. User performance and general users means like human beings only. So that particular performance is getting affected because of the age factor of the user, or because of the knowledge already having by the user, or because of the system characteristics such as graphics mode, latency, or the IO devices that we have used. Is it clear? Or even the task characteristics and interaction techniques are also important. So this will affect the user performance. So here, to explain this user performance studies, so some examples are considered here. The first one, test bed evaluation, is first point. So test bed evaluation is one way of what we can say, testing VR technology, how the user performance is getting affected. Test beds are nothing but simply, we can say that an experimental setup. One simple setup. So we can say that test beds are a way to deal with evaluation complexities proposed by researchers. Even if you say that, for example, మన ల్యాబ్లో ఉండే ఎక్స్పెరిమెంట్ ఏదైనా తీసుకోండి, సింక్రనైజేషన్ ఆఫ్ ఎక్స్పెరిమెంట్, synchronization of alternator experiment తీసుకున్నప్పుడు. So we do have a particular setup for that. It's clear. And we are going to take one alternator, one DC motor, and even lamp dark method we are employing, or even we are also employing synchroscope method. It's clear. And we are going to take that particular experiment, and we are going to say that this particular experimental setup consists of some tasks. It's clear. So synchronization of alternator, let us say. What is the task that is involved? Main task is what? Finally, you need to synchronize an alternator with the top bus bar. So for that, what you have to do? Initially, you have to run the machine at a synchronous speed with the help of prime mover. That means you need to take DC motor, clear, and you need to employ a DC starter. Sorry, a starter to be taken, 4-point starter, and you need to give the excitation. All these are the things which are there, isn't subparts. So you can imagine the same way like this. So a test bed evaluation always consists of what? Or it is they are composed of small number of universal tasks such as travel in the virtual environment, object selection, and object manipulation. So if you take a test bed evaluation in the virtual reality as one example here, so let us consider a travel. Let us assume this is one example where I have considered a small circle here, and I need to travel from here to the other end. This is one example which is considered. Is it clear? So I do repeat once again, test bed evaluations are nothing but they are composed of small number of universal virtual tasks or universal tasks such as travel in a virtual environment, object selection, and object manipulation. So in a virtual world, you are going to take one particular task here. So this particular test bed evaluation always gives us a structured way to model the subject performance, although the evaluation is more expensive to do. So in order to model the subject performance, a structured way is provided, especially in the test bed evaluation. That means a structured way means nothing but a procedure we can say, or step-by-step points for analyze or for conducting that particular experiment. These test beds make possible to predict subject performance in applications that include the task, subtask, and interaction techniques. Please do remember these test beds will definitely make possible to predict subject performance in applications that include the task, subtask, and interaction techniques that we use. So one example that is considered is evaluation of navigation task. Please do remember this is one example. One test bed example, let us say navigation task. That means the user has to move from one place to another place in the virtual environment. You please see here the black and white picture which is shown on the PPT. So this is one example where I have taken a circle at the bottom left corner. So that gives you the user, let us say, from there, the user has to move in the direction as shown with arrow mark. Is it clear? So this is one example. For this example, some obstacles may be included. Obstacles means while you are moving in the virtual world, you may get one house, you may get one tree, is it clear? Or sometimes you may get a fencing. The fencing is also there here. Please observe. So if you want, I'll show you here. The fencing is also shown here. This is what the fencing. Please observe. This is the fencing. So these are the different obstacles that are randomly placed in our path. So in this particular virtual environment, so the task is what? To move from one place to another place, and during this process, some obstacles will be placed in the path and how we need to overcome like that. This is one test bed example. So to test this one or to get an experiment here, 38 subjects were taken, that means 38 users were taken, and they are divided into different groups, such as 7 groups as shown here, that is 7 groups mentioned here, and each group is using a different navigation technique. There are different navigation techniques such as steering based, also manipulation based, and target specification techniques. So like that, there are 3 techniques are included here. So one for each group, one technique is considered. That means all the 38 subjects which are divided into 7 groups, and each group is using a different navigation technique. Maybe group 1 may be using steering based, group 2 may be using manipulation based, and target specification techniques like that. And it is observed that the steering based includes what? Pointing, gaze tracking, or torso tracking. Manipulation base includes Homer, that is go-go concept, where in this go-go concept, the subject stretches its hand into the virtual world, grasps an object, and then pulls the virtual camera forward. And then the hand is stretched towards the object. Is it clear? Object, when the object is held by the hand, then the person moves towards that particular object. అంటే ఫర్ ఎగ్జాంపుల్ మనం చిన్నపిల్లలుగా ఉన్నప్పుడు ఏం చేస్తాం, మనం వాక్ చేసేటప్పుడు ఒక సపోర్ట్ తీసుకుంటాం కదండి. సపోర్ట్ తీసుకున్నప్పుడు ఫస్ట్ విల్ క్యాచ్ హోల్డ్ ఆఫ్ దట్ పర్టికులర్ ఆబ్జెక్ట్ and then we move towards that particular object. The same way here, the go-go concept involves stretching of hand into the virtual world, then grasping that object and then pulling the camera, virtual camera forward. That is what go-go concept, which is nothing but manipulation based. So whereas in the case of target specification, so the raycasting or dragging concept is used. Dragging means you might have learned in the MATLAB or LabVIEW, where in the simulation you are going to drag one object from one form to one file to another file. Nothing but dragging. Not only simulation, even in a Word file also, you can take one circle, drag from the menu, and then put it in the Word file, new file like that. Simply dragging. That dragging is comes under target specification. So out of these 3 techniques, please observe the technique that is employed is gaze directed, pointing, torso directed, Homer, map dragging, raycasting, go-go concept. So all these concepts you can observe the total time taken for completing the task is less, especially in the gaze directed concept. Please observe in the gaze directed concept, the time taken is very less. So it is experimentally proved that the gaze directed concept is fastest in completing the task when you are considering this test bed evaluation example. Is it clear? That's about what test bed evaluation of navigation task as one example. Another one is there. Let us consider another test bed example here. Nothing but object selection and placing task. Please do remember the third example, the second test bed example is object selection and placement task. That means This is the object we are going to select, and this object is to be placed in between the two gray colored box. That means subjects had to select a highlighted cube and place it in the target area between the two gray cubes. So మనకు సింపుల్ కాన్సెప్ట్ ఏంటంటే ఒక మౌస్ తీసుకొని పర్టికులర్ ఆబ్జెక్ట్ సెలెక్ట్ చేసి మౌస్ ద్వారా ఇక్కడ డ్రాగ్ చేసి ఇందులో ప్లేస్ చేసేయచ్చు. అది కూడా ఒక మెథడ్. దిస్ ఇస్ వాట్ one example. Is it clear? So the second test bed example that is considered is what? Object selection and placement task. So what is the task here means? We need to select that highlighted box. Here the dark colored, gray colored box is to be highlighted. That part, cube is to be taken and then it should be placed in between the two gray blocks. That means in a target area. This we call it a target area. That is between the two gray cubes. This is one example, second test bed example. Where here, for this experimenting this particular example, 48 students were, 48 users were selected. Just a minute, please. Classroom. Okay. So to experiment this particular second test bed evaluation, 48 users were selected, nothing but subjects. And these subjects were divided into 9 groups. Is it clear? Object selection was done in 3 methods. One is go-go method, raycasting method, and occlusion method. And ఈ different groups మీద ఈ 3 methods యూజ్ చేసి experiment చేశారన్నమాట. So these experiments, for each subject, the distance to the object, the DOF used for box manipulation is varied. DOF are degrees of freedom. Please remember, for each subject, the distance to the object, the DOF used for box manipulation are varied. అంటే ఒక్కొక్క సబ్జెక్ట్ కి డిస్టెన్స్ టు ద ఆబ్జెక్ట్ వేరీ చేయడం లేదా డిగ్రీస్ ఆఫ్ ఫ్రీడమ్ ని చేంజ్ చేయడం. And we know that when the distance is large, it's difficult to select that particular object. Is it clear? And it is also observed that in this particular test bed evaluation, like considering this object selection and then placing, the 3 methods are employed, as I said, that is raycasting, go-go concept, and occlusion. So here go-go concept was very slow and raycasting was very fast. From the graph it is shown here, please observe, as the distance is increased, means the distance to the object we are seeing. You say that go-go concept is very slow and raycasting method is very fast. Please observe. So on y-axis you are going to take selection time, on x-axis you are going to take the distance. So as the distance is large, the selection time will be very high for go-go concept and very low for the raycasting concept. So from this experiment, we can say that when the distances are very far away from the object, or when the distance is when the object is very far away, then in that case definitely go-go concept cannot be used. So you need to go for raycasting concept. Is it clear? That's about what second test bed evaluation. So in user performance studies, that means to understand the user performance studies, test bed example is one, test bed evaluation is one example. And already I told you that in these user performance studies, so even system characteristics also play an important role. System characteristics, the one which I have drawn underlined with red color, system characteristics is very important also. It's one of the important tasks. So after test bed, then you can take influence of system responsiveness and user performance. That means system యొక్క response ఎలా ఉంది. That means system characteristics base చేసుకొని response అనేది మారుతూ ఉంటుంది అన్నమాట. System characteristics అంటే I'll tell you one example. ల్యాప్టాప్ 8 GB RAM తీసుకోండి, అలానే 1 GB RAM ఉండే ల్యాప్టాప్ తీసుకోండి. జనరల్ గా మనం ఆపరేట్ చేసేటప్పుడు ఏ ల్యాప్టాప్ మీద ఎక్కువ ఫాస్ట్ ఉంటుందని, the one which is having larger RAM, 8 GB RAM ఉండేది కొంచెం ఫాస్ట్ గా వర్క్ అవుతుంది కంపేర్ టు ద ఫస్ట్ వన్. అంటే ఏంటి అక్కడ RAM is nothing but one of the system part కదా. అంటే సిస్టమ్ క్యారెక్టరిస్టిక్స్ ర్యామ్ చేంజ్ అయింది అనుకోండి, ఆబ్వియస్లీ సిస్టమ్ యొక్క రెస్పాన్స్ కూడా చేంజ్ అవుతుంది. దట్స్ వాట్ హియర్. సో ఇన్ ఎ సిమిలర్ వే, ఈవెన్ ఇన్ ద వర్చువల్ రియాలిటీ ఆల్సో, the system responsiveness is also one of the important factor that will influence the user performance. So this particular system responsiveness is inverse relation to the time between the user input and the simulation response to that input. So the system responsiveness is always inversely proportional to the time between the user input and the simulation response to that input. So the factor studies done at Rutgers University in the earlier 90s. So please do remember, this particular system responsiveness was studied at Rutgers University in the early 1990s. Is it clear? And what are the system responsiveness characteristics that are considered means here? Influence of refresh rate, that is frames per second, and graphics mode. So these two were taken and then tested. Is it clear? How the user performance is getting influenced by this refresh rate as well as graphics mode. For this particular example, experiment, again 48 subjects were selected, in which male and female group are there. That is 48 male and 48 female group. And volunteer undergraduate, all volunteers are undergraduate students only, right-handed. Please do remember, all are right-handed only. So the task is what? To capture the bouncing ball in the smallest amount of time. So that you can see here, this is what the bouncing ball. Clear? So influence of refresh rate and graphics mode ఈ రెండు ఇక్కడ టెస్ట్ చేశారు. దేని మీద? ఒక బౌన్సింగ్ బాల్ ని మనం క్యాచ్ చేయాలి. We have to capture the bouncing ball in a smallest time అన్నమాట. అలా చేసేటప్పుడు 48 subjects were considered, where again 48 male and 48 female are also there. These subjects and ఈ 48 మంది male and female group, they were divided into different subgroups, and each group having a different refresh rate and graphics mode. అంటే ఒక్కొక్క గ్రూప్ కి ఒక్కొక్క రిఫ్రెష్ రేట్ ఇచ్చాం, అలానే గ్రాఫిక్స్ మోడ్ కూడా. సో లైక్ దట్ ఈచ్ సబ్జెక్ట్ పర్ఫార్మ్డ్ 12 trials. అంటే ఒక్కొక్క సబ్జెక్ట్ 12 times experimented, separated by 15 seconds rest period. అంటే ఒక్కొక్క సెషన్ కి గ్యాప్ ఎంత తీసుకున్నారంటే 15 seconds. Clear? And here the ball is appeared with random velocity direction and maintained a speed of 25 centimeters per second. Ball is having its speed of 25 centimeters per second, but its direction is changing randomly. The task is what? When the ball, which is having a velocity speed of 25 centimeters per second and moving in random directions, we need to capture that particular ball. This is the task. So in this task, 48 male and 48 female were considered and tested. 12 times tested. So the ball ni capture chestundali. So ఒకసారి చూడండి, initially the ball is here, then it is coming forward and it is hitting the floor, and then that is bouncing back. Is it clear? And again ball tries to bounce on the floor. So like that. So when the ball is moving from one place to another place, by using that headphones, you can see here the headphones are placed here, shutter glasses are placed here, polymer sensor is also included here, and this is the master, magnetic source is also there, and virtual space, the workspace is also included here. So in this virtual workspace, the ball is moving randomly with a certain speed, 25 centimeter speed per second speed lo eltundi. So this is what experimental setup. Clear? And this is the characteristics. So it is observed that ball capturing time was influenced sharply by the graphics refresh rate, especially when the rate fell below 14 frames per second. Then ball capturing time was very much less. అదే రిఫ్రెష్ రేట్ ఎక్కువ ఉంది అనుకోండి, అంటే 14 FPS కంటే ఇంకా ఎక్కువ ఉంది అనుకోండి, దెన్ ద బాల్ క్యాప్చరింగ్ టైమ్ ఈస్ వెరీ లార్జ్. క్లియర్? ద స్టాండర్డ్, దట్ మీన్స్ గ్రాఫిక్స్ రిఫ్రెష్ రేట్ చేంజ్ అయ్యే కొద్దీ, ఎస్పెషల్లీ వెన్ ద రేట్ ఫెల్ బిలో 14 FPS, సో బాల్ క్యాప్చరింగ్ టైమ్ వాస్ వెరీ మచ్ ఇన్ఫ్లుయెన్స్. ఆ 14 FPS కంటే ఇంకా ఎక్కువ తీసుకున్నాం అనుకోండి, బాల్ క్యాప్చరింగ్ టైం విల్ బి వెరీ వెరీ లార్జ్. So it is observed that at low refresh rates, where the ball motion appears saccadic, they grasped in a corner, keeping their arm stationary. At high refresh rates, they moved their hand in a ballistic way to capture it. When the refresh rate is very low, no need of movement of our hand. మీరు గమనించండి, ఈ హ్యాండ్ మూవ్మెంట్ రిఫ్రెష్ రేట్ వెరీ స్లోగా ఉన్నప్పుడు మనమే ప్రతిసారి హ్యాండ్ మూవ్ చేయాల్సిన అవసరం లేదు. When the refresh rate is very low, it is clearly visible to our eyes that okay, that ball is moving in which direction. I can simply put my hand in that direction and catch hold that ball. Is it clear? And even refresh frame rate is very less. But if that refresh rate is very large, ఎక్కువ ఉంది అనుకోండి, అప్పుడు ఏమవుతుందంటే బాల్ మూవ్మెంట్ ఆల్సో will be very fast, and sometimes it is difficult to that catching up that particular ball. That is why, so at high refresh rates, generally the user moves their hand in a ballistic way to capture it. So it is observed that from the experiments, it is observed that at very low refresh rate, and FPS, see here, x-axis is what? FPS. Y-axis is the mean completion time. The completion task. A ball catch hold చేయడం అనేది completion task. So at very low refresh rate, that is low frames per second, monographics is taking large time. You can see here 15 seconds. Whereas this one, that is stereo graphics mode, is almost taking like what? 7 FPS. Please observe 15 FPS is for monographics and approximately 7 FPS is for stereo graphics. You can observe that at low refresh rates, so stereo graphics takes very less time to complete the task, whereas monographics will take larger time. This is how the system characteristic will respond, or it gets influence the user performance. But the same thing, if you take high refresh rate, this is very high, almost 28 FPS per example, student. Both monographics and stereo graphics are not getting changed. Their operation time or their completion task time is very, very low, and both are same. Is it clear? Only at low refresh rates you observe that the task completion time is more for monographics, less for stereo graphics, when we consider refresh rate on x-axis. But the same thing you can observe as the number of trials is increased, user learning, ikkada user performance, ikkada vachenapudiki user learning మీద కూడా అఫెక్ట్ అవుతుందండి. ఎట్లా అంటారా, ఫస్ట్ ట్రయల్ లో యూజ్ చేసినప్పుడు చూడండి, లో రిఫ్రెష్ రేట్ దగ్గరకు వచ్చినప్పుడు మోనోగ్రాఫిక్స్ ఎలా ఉందో. As the number of trials is increased, you observe that the task completion time is getting reduced and reaches almost what? 10 trials కి వచ్చేటప్పటికి ఆల్మోస్ట్ 10 FPS కి వచ్చేసింది. 3 FPS లేదా 10 FPS. సారీ, ఫర్ వన్ పర్టికులర్ 1 FPS అంటే 1 frame per second తీసుకున్నప్పుడు the task completion time for 10 trials is what? Almost 11 seconds. But the same 1 FPS, the task completion time for one trial is what? 25, nearly 25 దగ్గర. So as you go on increase the trials, nothing but you will be getting experience, and that will improve your completion time. Similarly, if you go for higher refresh rates, in that case the task completion time is not changing, it is constant. Even if number of trials are increased or not, the task completion time will be same at higher refresh rates. This you need to remember. This is for monographics. Similarly, for stereo graphics also, you'll observe that the user learning is definitely is increased as the number of trials is increased, and obviously the completion time is getting reduced. For different FPS it is shown. For 1 FPS it is getting decreased as shown here. For 28 FPS, please observe there is no much change in that task completion time. Even after 10 trials, even at first trial or second trial, when the frame rate is very high, that is FPS 28 or like that, then in that case, see here stereographics plays an important role. So at higher FPS, both monographics and stereographics are not changing, but at lower FPS only, stereographics is more advantage. It is observed that stereographics had a beneficial effect on learning. That is, subjects were more familiar to the task. It was presented more realistically to them. I hope you understand. That's about what system responsiveness and user performance, system responsiveness on learning, and system responsiveness on object placement tasks. I request you please take this as an assignment to all of you. Write a short notes on influence of system responsiveness on object placement task. So object placement task, just like what we have seen in the previous two examples, in a similar way, we can also explain that system responsiveness will definitely affect or influence the object placement task. So in the next class, we'll discuss about feedback multimodality modality. So meanwhile, I'll take attendance.